Your soulmate has something they wish you knew. Watch this now, because they truly love you. My beloved, stop for a moment. Before you scroll away, before you tell yourself that this is just another message appearing at the right time, take one breath and listen carefully. There is something your soulmate wishes they could tell you. Not something casual. Not something they would say simply because they miss you. Something they have carried quietly inside themselves for longer than you realize. They have rehearsed these words in their mind. They have imagined sitting across from you and finally saying everything without fear, without pride, without interruption. And yet, every time they came close to telling you, something stopped them. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was distance. Maybe circumstances became complicated. Maybe another person entered the picture. Maybe both of you were hurt by things neither of you knew how to explain. Or perhaps the biggest obstacle was simply this. They did not know whether your heart still had room for them. That question has been haunting them. They wonder whether you still think about them. They wonder whether you have moved forward. They wonder whether the memories you shared still mean anything to you. And more than anything, they wonder whether you would believe them if they finally admitted the truth. Because the truth is much deeper than the words they have spoken. Your soulmate has something they wish you knew. They love you. But their love has not always looked like love. Sometimes it looked like silence. Sometimes it looked like distance. Sometimes it looked like stubbornness. Sometimes it looked like disappearing when you desperately wanted them to stay. Sometimes it looked like pretending not to care. And perhaps that is what hurt you the most. You looked at their behavior and thought, if they really loved me, why would they do this? You asked yourself that question when the nights became too quiet. You asked it while looking at your phone. You asked it after seeing their name and wondering whether they would ever reach out. You asked it when a familiar song suddenly reminded you of them. You asked it when someone mentioned something connected to your past. And eventually, you stopped asking. You told yourself that perhaps the connection had been one-sided. Perhaps you had imagined the depth. Perhaps you had given meaning to moments that meant nothing to them. Perhaps you cared more. But there is another side of this story. A side you could not see. Your soulmate has been fighting an internal battle that they rarely show anyone. They may appear calm. They may appear distracted. They may laugh with other people. They may continue their normal routine. They may post pictures. They may talk about work, family, plans, money, travel, or ordinary things. But none of that tells you what happens when they are alone. Because loneliness has a strange way of removing every mask. When the noise disappears, your memory returns. Your voice returns. Your smile returns. The little things return. The moments they thought they had forgotten suddenly become vivid. They remember the way you looked at them. They remember something you said that you probably do not even remember saying. They remember how comfortable silence could feel when you were together. They remember the strange sense of familiarity they felt around you. And they remember the moment they realized you were becoming important. That realization frightened them. Because loving someone gives that person the power to hurt you. And your soulmate was not prepared for how much power you would eventually have over their heart. They could handle attraction. They could handle chemistry. They could handle excitement. But emotional vulnerability was different. You reached a part of them that other people never reached. That is why they sometimes became confusing. One day they wanted closeness. The next day they needed distance. One moment they seemed ready to tell you everything. Then suddenly they became quiet. They were not necessarily losing feelings. They were struggling with them. And perhaps you never knew that. Perhaps you interpreted their hesitation as rejection. Perhaps you thought their silence meant indifference. Perhaps you believed their distance meant they had found someone else. But your soulmate wants you to know something. You were never as easy for them to forget as they pretended. There were moments when they tried. They told themselves they needed to move on. They tried filling their schedule. They surrounded themselves with people. They focused on responsibilities. They tried meeting new people. They convinced themselves that someone else might be easier. Someone who would not make them question themselves. Someone who would not awaken old fears. Someone who would not make them feel so exposed. But comparison became unavoidable. Because when you have experienced something emotionally significant, ordinary connections can feel strangely empty. They may meet someone attractive and still think of you. They may have a pleasant conversation and suddenly remember yours. They may hear a phrase you used to say and feel something tighten inside them. They may visit a familiar place and remember you standing beside them. And that is when they realize something they have been trying to avoid. Replacing a person is not the same as replacing a feeling. They could distract themselves from you. But they could not erase what they experienced with you. That is the secret they wish you knew. You were not simply another chapter. You changed the way they understood love. Before you, they may have believed love was mostly about comfort. Maybe they thought relationships were supposed to be convenient. Maybe they believed that if two people liked each other, everything should naturally work. Then you entered their life and complicated everything. Because suddenly love became deeper. It became uncomfortable. It demanded honesty. It forced them to confront parts of themselves they had ignored. You made them question their habits. You made them question their fears. You made them question what they truly wanted. And perhaps that is why the connection became difficult. Sometimes the person who awakens the deepest feelings also awakens the deepest fears. Your soulmate wishes they had understood that earlier. They wish they had realized that their fear was not proof that you were wrong for them. It was proof that the connection mattered. They wish they had spoken instead of withdrawing. They wish they had explained instead of making you guess. They wish they had admitted when they were scared. They wish they had said, "I don't know what to do with these feelings." Instead, they may have acted as though nothing mattered. And now they understand the damage that caused. They know silence can create stories. When someone refuses to explain themselves, the other person begins creating explanations. You may have created explanations that were painful. Maybe you thought you were not enough. Maybe you thought they were embarrassed by you. Maybe you thought they never truly cared. Maybe you thought another person was more important. Maybe you blamed yourself for everything. But your soulmate wants you to stop carrying responsibility for emotions that were never yours to manage. Their inability to communicate was theirs. Their fear was theirs. Their confusion was theirs. Their choices were theirs. You were never responsible for rescuing them from themselves. And yet, there is something beautiful happening now. They are beginning to understand that love cannot survive forever inside someone's imagination. At some point, feelings have to become words. Words have to become actions. Actions have to become consistency. Your soulmate is beginning to understand this. They know that simply loving you silently is not enough. Thinking about you is not enough. Missing you is not enough. Watching from a distance is not enough. They know that if they want a place in your future, they have to show up differently. And that realization has been growing inside them. Slowly. Quietly. Perhaps you have already noticed small changes. Maybe their energy feels different. Maybe communication has shifted. Maybe they have become more curious about your life. Maybe they have started asking mutual friends about you. Maybe they revisit old memories. Maybe they keep finding reasons to check whether you are okay. Maybe they are preparing themselves for a conversation they have postponed for far too long. But do not misunderstand the message. This is not a promise that you should stop living your life and wait for someone. No. Your life belongs to you. Your healing belongs to you. Your future belongs to you. Love should meet you while you are moving forward, not demand that you remain frozen in the past. If your soulmate truly loves you, they must learn to meet you with maturity. They must learn to communicate. They must learn to respect your boundaries. They must learn that affection without accountability is not enough. And perhaps this is the lesson they are finally learning. They are beginning to understand what they could lose. Not because someone threatened them. Not because another person is competing for your attention. But because time has a way of revealing what pride tries to hide. They realize that you may not always be available. They realize that you have your own dreams. Your own path. Your own future. And for the first time, the possibility of truly losing you feels real. That realization hurts. But sometimes pain becomes the teacher that pride refuses to listen to. Your soulmate may be thinking about one particular moment. A moment when they could have chosen differently. Maybe they could have stayed. Maybe they could have called. Maybe they could have told you the truth. Maybe they could have defended the connection. Maybe they could have apologized sooner. Maybe they could have said the words you needed to hear. But they didn't. And regret has a unique voice. It does not always scream. Sometimes it whispers at 3 in the morning. Sometimes it appears while driving alone. Sometimes it arrives in the middle of a crowded room. Sometimes it appears when they see couples laughing together. Sometimes it appears when they hear your name. And sometimes it appears when they finally admit, "I lost something precious because I was afraid." That sentence may be closer to their truth than you realize. They were afraid of needing you. Afraid of being rejected. Afraid of commitment. Afraid of being vulnerable. Afraid of repeating an old heartbreak. Afraid of losing control. Afraid that you would eventually discover their imperfections and leave. So they protected themselves before you ever had the chance to hurt them. But protection can become destruction when taken too far. A wall can keep pain out. It can also keep love out. Your soulmate is learning that now. They built emotional walls and then wondered why they felt lonely behind them. They created distance and then wondered why they missed you. They stayed silent and then wondered why you stopped speaking. They pretended not to care and then became devastated when you believed them. That contradiction has become impossible for them to ignore. And now there is something they want you to know. They never wanted you to believe that you were unimportant. They never wanted your heart to question its worth. They never wanted you to feel replaceable. If their actions made you feel that way, they carry regret about it. But remember this. You do not need someone else's apology to become valuable. You were valuable before they recognized it. You were valuable while they were confused. You were valuable while they were silent. You were valuable when they walked away. And you remain valuable whether they return or not. That is one of the most important truths in this entire message. Your soulmate may love you deeply. But your identity cannot depend on whether they finally admit it. Love should add to your life. It should not become the measure of your worth. If this connection is meant to continue, it must continue in a healthier form. Not through guessing. Not through obsession. Not through emotional games. Not through jealousy. Not through endless waiting. But through honesty. Your soulmate is beginning to understand that. They are asking themselves difficult questions. What do I really want? Why did I run? Why did I hide my feelings? Why did I allow fear to make decisions for me? Why did I expect them to understand what I refused to explain? And perhaps the hardest question. If they gave me another opportunity, would I finally be brave enough to love them properly? That question keeps returning. Because somewhere inside, they know the answer. Yes. They want another opportunity. But they also know that wanting another chance does not automatically earn one. They have to become worthy of it. They have to demonstrate change. And that is where their internal journey begins. They are realizing that love is not only a feeling. Love is responsibility. Love is communication. Love is patience. Love is choosing someone even when the moment is inconvenient. Love is telling the truth when lying would be easier. Love is apologizing without turning the apology into an excuse. Love is listening without preparing a defense. Love is making space for another person's fears without exploiting them. Love is showing up. And perhaps your soulmate is finally ready to understand this. They wish you knew that they are not the same person they were when they hurt you. That does not erase what happened. It does not make the past disappear. But people can grow. People can confront themselves. People can change their patterns. People can become more emotionally honest. And sometimes losing someone teaches a lesson that keeping them never could. Your absence became a mirror. In your absence, they saw themselves. They saw the ways they avoided difficult conversations. They saw how pride controlled their decisions. They saw how fear disguised itself as independence. They saw how easily silence could become cruelty. And they realized that if they ever loved someone again, they did not want to repeat those mistakes. Then another realization came. They did not want to love someone else while still emotionally carrying you. That frightened them. Because healing does not always mean forgetting. Sometimes healing means understanding why something affected you so deeply. Your soulmate is trying to understand. They are looking back at the relationship without romanticizing everything. They remember the beautiful moments. But they also remember the painful ones. They remember disagreements. They remember misunderstandings. They remember moments when both of you were stubborn. They remember words that should never have been spoken. They remember silence that lasted too long. And yet, underneath all those memories, one thing remains. The connection mattered. It mattered enough to change them. It mattered enough to make them question themselves. It mattered enough that even after distance, something inside them still responds when your memory appears. That is what they wish you knew. Not that everything was perfect. It wasn't. Not that they handled everything correctly. They didn't. Not that the future is guaranteed. It isn't. But the feelings were real. The connection was real. And the impact you had on them was real. You were never imagining everything. There were moments when they felt it too. Perhaps even more strongly than they admitted. They simply did not know what to do with it. And now they are learning. Slowly. One realization at a time. They are learning that real love cannot always be controlled. They are learning that vulnerability is not weakness. They are learning that saying, "I miss you," does not make someone desperate. They are learning that saying, "I was wrong," does not make someone small. They are learning that asking for forgiveness does not guarantee receiving it. And they are learning perhaps the most painful lesson of all. You can love someone and still lose them. That possibility has changed them. Because they no longer want to take your presence for granted. They no longer want to assume you will always be there. They no longer want to postpone important conversations. And somewhere inside them, a sentence has formed. If I ever get the chance, I will tell them everything. Everything. The truth behind the silence. The reason behind the distance. The fear behind the hesitation. The memories they never admitted they kept. The moments when they missed you. The times they almost reached out. The nights when they wondered whether you were thinking about them too. They want you to know that there were many moments when they almost broke the silence. Their fingers hovered over your name. They opened conversations. They typed messages. Then deleted them. They wrote something. Read it. Thought it sounded too vulnerable. Deleted it. Started again. Then fear returned. And the phone went dark. You may never know how many conversations happened inside their head that never reached your phone. But they happened. They imagined saying, "I miss you. I am sorry. I was scared. I still care." I never stop thinking about you. I wish I had handled things differently. I don't know if you will forgive me. I don't know if you still want me. But I need you to know that what I felt was real. Those words have existed inside them. And maybe one day, they will become spoken words. But until then, you must not abandon yourself waiting for them. Keep living. Keep growing. Keep becoming the person you were always meant to become. Because the strongest version of this story is not one where you sit beside a window waiting for someone to return. The strongest version is one where you become so whole that whoever enters your life must meet you with honesty. If your soulmate returns, let them meet the healed version of you. Not the version who tolerated confusion. Not the version who accepted crumbs. Not the version who constantly questioned their worth. Let them meet the person who knows what love should feel like. Let them understand that your heart is precious. Let them understand that access to you is not automatic. Let them understand that love requires effort. And if they truly love you, they will not be offended by that standard. They will rise to meet it. That is what your soulmate is slowly realizing. They do not simply want your attention. They want your trust. And trust cannot be demanded. It must be rebuilt. You deserve someone who does not make you constantly decode their behavior. You deserve a relationship where communication is not a privilege. And if your soulmate truly loves you, they will eventually understand that. Maybe that is the message they wish they could send you today. I never stopped caring. I was afraid. I made mistakes. I know I hurt you. I know words alone cannot repair everything. But I want you to know that you were never insignificant to me. You changed something inside me. You showed me a kind of connection I did not know how to handle. And even though I did not always show it correctly, my feelings were real. Please do not measure your worth by my inability to express mine. That last sentence matters. Because sometimes people confuse another person's emotional limitations with their own lack of worth. Do not make that mistake. Someone's inability to love properly does not mean you were difficult to love. Someone's fear of commitment does not mean you were not worthy of commitment. Someone's emotional immaturity does not mean you demanded too much. Someone's silence does not mean you were forgettable. Sometimes people walk away from beautiful things because they are not ready to hold them.